In the feature bout on ABC and ESPN Plus, UFC 290 in the welterweight division, Robbie Lawler's farewell fight, and what a farewell it was. He gets the knockout victory over Nico Price, a very talented welterweight, at the 38-second mark of the very first round. Well, back-to-back fights, I didn't realize. Both 38 seconds of round one. I mean,
Yeah,
what
I
do you got to
noticed that.
say?
Super weird.
Mark, start us off. What are you gonna? What do you have to say about this 38-second knockout, going out, riding off into the sunset for Robbie Lawler?
How about your boy picking that Robbie Lawler knockout, baby? Let's go. And Pantoja, which I forgot to highlight. Yeah, we say it often on here, but unfortunately, most MMA retirements seem to come with a legend going out on his back. And this was the total opposite. From beginning to end, this was one of the most perfect MMA retirements I can ever recall seeing. From Robbie making the walk to the Last of the Mohicans song to the way he stood at the cage door and took it all in to the way that he was landing that left in the clinch and capped off a legendary career full of knockouts with a clean walk-off knockout. And then to top it all, because the UFC knew ahead of time that this was the end for him, they have this unreal video recap of his career queued up to show. I could watch this thing a million times. And it's so good that it even manages to extract some emotion from Robbie, who is one of the most stoic guys there's ever been. So just perfect in every way from beginning to end. What a night for Robbie Lawler, and I'm so happy that he got to go out like that.
Omar, what did you make of that knockout?
I mean, there's not much to say, man. That knockout was nasty and it was quick. It was dirty too, just the way that Lawler likes to fight. Inside of that dirty boxing area, uppercut, hook to the temple, and that's all she wrote for Nico Price, man. Shout out to Nico Price though for taking that fight. I think everybody kind of was counting him out as it was and wanted Robbie to win, and it was a rough fight, I thought, for Nico to take. I'm sure from Nico's point of view, he got a chance to fight a real legend in Robbie Lawler. But to talk about that video package, that was probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And I kind of want them to do a lot more of that, to be honest. And I think it probably doesn't happen because guys don't tend to talk about their retirements before or with so much time before things are going to go down. And obviously Robbie Lawler's been there for so long that...
And then they tend to get knocked out.
Yeah, but I think Robbie Lawler's
Shogun, and are you going to show that after a guy gets knocked out?
Yeah, I guess so. Robbie though was also there for such a long time, and I think was one of the relative OGs of this era of MMA at this point. That I know Dana White was the one who kind of recruited Robbie Lawler and like scouted him and things like that. So I think they have a long history, and I think it was more of a personal thing on that side. But I'm glad they did it, and your boy was in Buffalo Wild Wings kind of like holding back tears a little bit while Robbie Lawler is like ugly crying on TV. But it was a beautiful moment, and I'm really glad that they did it that way. And I mean, what can you say about Robbie Lawler, man? I mean, that dude has had some of the most legendary fights in welterweight history. I mean, Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald is one of the greatest fights you'll ever see in your life. Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks had some of the best fights that I can recall in the welterweight division. Definitely some of the most competitive fights and the violent fights I've seen. I can't say enough about Robbie Lawler. If you didn't get on the train early enough, you definitely missed out on one hell of an era in Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, agree. I'll talk about Robbie for a minute as well. Mike, unless you want to get in first.
No, you go first.
Okay. The man is the definition of entertainment when it comes to MMA, of just savage, heart-pounding entertainment. He could always end any fight with one shot. He was so hard to hurt and so willing to engage in wars, and he would go for the kill from the opening bell to the final bell. And that is why we love him, and that's why everyone loves him. And what a crazy career this man had. He was like the next big thing when he debuted in the UFC and finished Aaron Riley way back, whatever freaking year that was. I should have probably had it open for the
O2.
point of this. But O2, thank you. O2, fucking crazy. But he went 4-3 in his initial stint in the UFC. One of the losses was due to injury, so you could call it 4-2. But he, the first few were wins and knockouts, and he was this huge deal. And then he got beat by Nick Diaz, and then he got beat again by Evan Turner, and then the UFC let him go. And all this hype of being the next big thing was kind of just like all of a sudden over. And he bounced around. He went to King of the Cage and Icon, and he even took a fight in Pride. Turned up in Elite XC where he knocked out Murillo Hua. Then he knocked out Scott Smith, and it was like, oh, he's coming back. Then he lands in Strikeforce. He goes 3-5 in Strikeforce. Some great fights, some great knockouts, but 3-5. And when the UFC bought Strikeforce and Robbie Lawler was suddenly back in the UFC, he was not supposed to do anything. He was almost like, yeah, this guy Robbie Lawler, he was like pretty cool back in the day. He still puts on these really entertaining fights. Who can we match him up against that's fun? And this man proceeded to win 8 of 9, beat Johnny Hendricks to become the UFC welterweight champion in a classic, defend it in an all-time classic against Rory McDonald with some of the greatest scenes that we've ever seen from a single fight ever, and then defend it in another classic against Carlos Condit. So, of course, he then did lose the belt to Tyron Woodley and picked up some losses from that point on, but that 9-fight run from the time that he returned to the UFC was one of the most out-of-nowhere, unexpected, and truly memorable runs that we will ever see in MMA. The man is a legend.
He is, man. Not the longest title reign, but 3 or 4 fight title reign. I think I said it last week, and I've said it before, and I'll say it one more time here, and I may say it again one day. My favorite title reign that I can even recall. Out of all the title reigns, in terms of punch for punch, pound for pound, his second fight with Johnny Hendricks. By the way, that first fight was great too. Second fight with Johnny Hendricks, his rematch with Rory, one of the top 5 greatest fights of all time, and then his fight with Carlos Condit wasn't much worse. Yep. I mean, those 2 fights right there, back to back. Forget it, man. Forget it. Anyway.
He truly hit a point, which is crazy for a guy that was so up and down for so much of his career. But he truly hit a point where you would the fight would be, the guys would be walking out to the cage, and you would feel like, fuck, man, this guy's got to get in a cage with Robbie Lawler right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it felt like. Like, he just hit this point of being like this mythical, scary motherfucker.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that quote he talked about? I think somebody asked him about Connor. He was in an interview.
Oh.
And somebody was like, I'm not
just
coming.
now?
No. A couple years ago.
Oh.
And somebody was like, and he said, I'm not coming for your something. And the interviewer was like, what are you coming for? And he was like, your soul.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
I remember
now
that.
You say that. He had a funny one this weekend where they told, I guess Connor tweeted back by December with a picture of Robbie Lawler. And they told him that Connor had tweeted that he thought he'd be back and he wasn't really retiring. And Robbie goes, no, well, I mean, why? Does Connor want to fight?
Yeah.
And he was like, because for that, maybe. So that gave me a little chuckle. But
I don't hate that. I'll be honest with you. That fight's kind of fun.
Yeah, hell yeah,
I don't
man.
need
That fight would be crazy.
I don't want to see either of them lose that fight. Yeah, let him go. This was awesome.
Man, give Robbie Lawler that one last bag, bro. Give him his right panty night, man.